A deep silence envelops the social existence of women. This is less an oversight than a way of conceiving the historical narrative. This concerns first of all the wars, reigns, governments, events, the public spaces where the men are the visible actors. This public conception of history has long time prevailed. She cared little for the private, the everyday life, and the women. In fact, the advent of women in the historical narrative is linked to the feminism. Facing with many challenges of the future, education appears to be an essential asset in enabling humanity to progress towards the ideals of peace, freedom, and social justice. The essential role of education is the continuous development of the personality and of societies. So, do we have the right to stop this activity? Of course not. Currently, education is viewed as a permanent process of enriching knowledge and skills, but also, and perhaps above all, as a privileged construction of the person and of relationships between individuals, between nations. It is the goal of education to develop analytical skills, therefore to understand that the balance is the key in everything. Indeed, anything radical is bad. Radical ideologies are always followed by radical consequences, such as an absolute monarchy ended with a bloody revolution, or an unhealthy lifestyle which is followed by sudden death, once and for all. This is the idea. We must therefore reflect on our actions and ideologies so as not to become radical. Egypt, 15th century before Christ. The young Hatshepsut takes the power of the kingdom in her hands after the death of her father. When she sat on the throne, she wore an artificial beard to impose her authority, even though everyone knew she was a woman. And this is a characteristic story. Beside her primordial, traditional or natural task of the reproduction of the human race, we see that throughout history real women cross the scene, exceptional women, models of virtue, memorable queens, heroines such as Jeanne d'Arc, women who seized political power, defended countries, and have always served as a source of inspiration for men. Currently, women tend to accuse men that they have always limited their rights, but what they forget is the fact that men themselves didn't have many rights. They were always subjects to kings, slave owners, landlords, popes, etc. It was only at the end of the 17th century, after the Renaissance, that the idea of natural law appeared, and with the Enlightenment, the idea that all men have the right to liberty. However, it is true that we observe in the first instance the ignorance vis-à-vis the rights of women. Even the first Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen did not focus on women, which prompted the first feminist, Olympia de Gauche, to write the Declaration of the Rights of Women and Citizens. But we must also take into account the fact that similar to the exclusive concern of the men of the French Declaration, the American Constitution concerns the rights of whites and in particular those with property, so it is not only the women who have been ignored. Despite all the revolutionary ideas of the moment that come with the end of ancient regime and the proclamation of human rights, women remain neglected. Here comes the classical example of the appreciation of women, J.J.Rousseau, who describes the woman as a source of beauty, caress, and tenderness, yet he does not associate her with the notion of freedom, but he makes her dependent on her husband. Woman is made to submit to man, and to endure even injustice at his hands. The whole education of women ought to be relative to men, to please them, to be useful to them, to make themselves loved and honored by them, to educate them when young, to care for them when grown, to conceal them, to console them, and to make life agreeable and sweet to them. These are the duties of women at all the times, and should be taught them from their infancy. Then, inspired by Olympia de Gauche, author of numerous essays in favor of civil and political rights of women and the abolition of the black slavery, a young girl from England, Mary Wollstonecraft, goes to France to defend their thesis that women must have access to education in order to work, earn money, and thus live like a man. Both women are considered to be the first European feminists. Both were motivated by the personal tragic experience. The two started a struggle with the system, but unfortunately, this struggle turned out to be fatal. However, the story of feminism does not end here. Women gained the right to vote with the first wave of feminism, and this is when feminism entered the public debate. Then the second wave, the 70s, which is marked by the actions of the MLF, the Manifesto of 343, even the publication of Simone de Beauvoir, which marks the moment when opinions are divided. From now, new issues appear, such as the class struggle, the struggle against patriarchy, etc. To conclude, I would say that the 21st century requires from everyone a greater capacity of autonomy and judgment, which goes in pair with the strengthening of personal responsibility and the realization of the collective destiny. Man learns throughout his life, because each new stage requires the resolution of new problems, and we must be prepared for this. Times change, life changes, and human beings change too, while perfecting their qualities.
В каждом наброске, в каждом черновике учитель продолжается в своем ученике.